The news broke like thunder across Nigeria and beyond. Reports say President Bola Ahmed Tinubu may finally be set to release the detained Ipob leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, after fresh pressure from the United States. For years, the issue of Nnamdi Kanu's detention has been one of Nigeria's most sensitive political battles. Despite multiple court orders demanding his release, the federal government continued to hold him in custody. Every time the court ruled in his favor, another government excuse followed. But now, something appears to be shifting. This time, the pressure is not from Nigerians, not from activists, not even from local politicians. It is coming directly from the United States Senate, and it is carrying the weight of power that cannot be easily ignored. Senator Ashley Moody, known for her strong stance on justice and human rights, has announced plans to submit a bill that could lead to direct sanctions on the Nigerian government. Her proposal aims to penalize nations that violate international human rights agreements, and she singled out Nigeria's continuous detention of Nnamdi Kanu despite valid court orders. According to reports from Washington, the bill seeks to restrict foreign aid, impose visa bans on government officials, and even target assets linked to individuals who participate in or enable human rights violations. In her statement, Ashley Moody made it clear that democracy cannot stand where court judgments are ignored. She described the situation as a clear breach of the rule of law and called on Nigeria to do what is right before relations between both countries take a darker turn. This development has sent shock waves through Aso Rock. Tinubu's government, which is already battling local anger over economic hardship, fuel subsidy removal, and growing insecurity, now faces a new kind of threat: international pressure that could isolate Nigeria from its key global partners. Inside the presidential villa, sources say there is serious tension. High-ranking advisors are meeting quietly, trying to assess what these sanctions could mean. They know that once the US Senate begins to act, other Western countries, including the United Kingdom and members of the European Union, could follow. The fear is simple: Nigeria cannot afford another diplomatic crisis. The economy is fragile, investors are already hesitant, and inflation continues to rise. Sanctions could make things worse. They could weaken the naira even further, reduce foreign support, and create deeper mistrust between Nigeria and its allies. For Tinubu, the issue of Nnamdi Kanu has always been delicate. On one side, there is the political risk of appearing weak to those who believe releasing Kanu could encourage separatist sentiments. On the other side, there is the moral and legal responsibility to respect the courts and the Constitution. But now, the stakes have changed. The conversation is no longer just about politics, it is now about Nigeria's image, credibility, and its standing in the international community. Diplomats in Abuja have reportedly started making quiet moves to understand how serious the US Senate is about this bill. The American embassy has refused to comment publicly, but sources close to the matter say the proposal has already gained attention among several senators who are interested in foreign human rights cases. The message seems to be that Nigeria is being watched closely, and that the era of turning a blind eye to court disobedience is over. Across Nigeria, reactions have been strong. Supporters of Nnamdi Kanu are celebrating what they call a long-overdue step toward justice. They believe that if the US proceeds with sanctions, it will finally force the Nigerian government to obey its own courts. On social media, hashtags calling for Kanu's release have begun trending again, as people discuss how far the government might go to avoid an international scandal. Meanwhile, opposition politicians have started using the development to question Tinubu's leadership. They argue that disobeying court orders damages Nigeria's democracy and weakens public confidence in the system. Some even warn that continued defiance could push the country toward more unrest, especially in the southeast where tensions have remained high for years. Inside Aso Rock, the discussion has reportedly turned to strategy. Some advisors are urging the president to take quick action, to announce plans for Kanu's release and turn it into a gesture of peace and reconciliation. Others suggest finding a diplomatic route, such as negotiating quietly with the US before the bill moves too far. There are even those who believe Nigeria should stand its ground, arguing that foreign governments should not interfere in domestic issues. But the truth is clear: ignoring the situation will not make it disappear. The United States is not known for empty threats, especially when human rights are involved. Once sanctions begin, they can spread fast. Visa bans, travel restrictions, and funding cuts can affect top officials and their families. For many in power, this possibility is frightening. It could mean frozen assets abroad, denied entry into the US, and public embarrassment on the international stage. As all these unfold, ordinary Nigerians are watching with mixed feelings. Some see this as justice finally catching up with those in power. Others worry that sanctions might hurt the economy and ordinary citizens more than the politicians responsible. Yet, the general mood is that something significant is about to happen, something that could finally bring an end to a long and painful standoff. The conversation is no longer whether Nnamdi Kanu should be released, it is now when and how. The pressure is building fast, and the Tinubu administration knows it cannot ignore the storm that is coming. For years, the government has managed to delay this moment, but with the US Senate now stepping in, the situation has changed completely. This is not a simple political disagreement anymore. It has become an international matter, one that could define Tinubu's image before the world. The eyes of millions, both inside and outside Nigeria, are now focused on one decision: whether the president will finally bow to the rule of law and let Nnamdi Kanu walk free. The heat is rising, and the pressure is closing in on the Nigerian government from every direction. What started as a single announcement from US Senator Ashley Moody has now grown into a serious international concern. Inside government circles, the conversation has shifted from denial to deep worry. The fear is no longer about domestic criticism, it is about how far this US action could go if Nigeria does not respond quickly. Over the past few weeks, several US senators and human rights groups have publicly backed Ashley Moody's proposal. They believe the continued detention of Nnamdi Kanu, despite several court rulings, is a test of how much respect Nigeria truly has for the rule of law. According to multiple reports from Washington, the bill is gaining momentum faster than expected. It is drawing bipartisan support, meaning members of both major political parties in the US agree that something must be done. For the Tinubu administration, this is not just a diplomatic issue. It is now a full-blown political and economic problem. The Nigerian economy is already struggling, and any form of sanction could worsen things instantly. US sanctions could cut access to international loans, freeze some government-linked assets abroad, and even discourage foreign investors who are already nervous about the country's unstable policies. In short, it could create a new wave of financial panic that Nigeria cannot afford right now. At the same time, the pressure within Nigeria is becoming unbearable. Activists, lawyers, and ordinary citizens are asking louder questions. Why should a democratic country ignore its own court rulings? Why detain someone after judges have declared his arrest and trial illegal? These questions have become the focus of debates in the media and on social platforms. Even some government supporters are beginning to admit that continuing to hold Nnamdi Kanu might no longer make sense politically or economically. Sources inside Aso Rock say meetings are happening almost daily. Security chiefs, Justice Ministry officials, and senior political advisors are all giving conflicting advice. Some want the president to stand firm and insist that releasing Kanu could be seen as bowing to foreign pressure. Others argue that obeying the courts and freeing him would not only satisfy the US but also restore public confidence in Nigeria's justice system. Behind closed doors, there is also fear that the issue could spark bigger unrest in the southeast if the government continues to resist. For years, Kanu supporters have been a strong voice of protest. Every time a new ruling comes out in his favor and the government refuses to act, anger grows deeper. Many analysts now believe that releasing him might calm tensions, reduce security costs in the region, and help Tinubu gain some goodwill among people who currently do not trust his administration. Internationally, the signals are clear. The US State Department has remained cautious but firm, saying it supports the rule of law and expects all democratic governments to respect judicial orders. Several European diplomats have echoed this message quietly through their embassies in Abuja. It is becoming obvious that if Nigeria does not act, the international community might unite against it. Inside Washington, Ashley Moody's push is receiving heavy media attention. Her speech about Nigeria's disregard for court orders has gone viral online, shared by human rights advocates across Africa and the diaspora. She said plainly that the world cannot stay silent when justice is denied. Her statement has been translated into several African languages and has become a rallying point for global campaigners calling for Kanu's freedom. Back in Nigeria, Tinubu's team is working around the clock to manage public opinion. Several media aides have tried to calm the situation by saying that discussions are ongoing and that the president will act in line with national interest. But the truth is that the government is running out of excuses. Court orders are public documents. Everyone knows what the judges said. The world knows that Nnamdi Kanu was granted release several times. Keeping him locked up now only makes Nigeria appear lawless and authoritarian in the eyes of the world. Financial analysts have already warned that even the possibility of sanctions could harm Nigeria's economy. Investors hate uncertainty, and the talk of sanctions sends exactly that message. Every day that passes without a decision adds to the tension. The naira is shaky, fuel prices are rising, and businesses are struggling. Any international penalty could easily push things over the edge. There are whispers that the presidency might be preparing a plan. Some insiders say Tinubu may release Kanu quietly but attach certain conditions to limit his political influence. Others believe he will try to negotiate with the US before the bill moves forward, promising reforms and a review of the case. But time is short, and Washington is moving faster than Abuja expected. Meanwhile, the public mood is shifting. In many parts of the country, people now discuss the situation not as a tribal or political issue but as a question of justice and national integrity. Many Nigerians who were once indifferent now say that obeying court orders is the only way to prove that the government truly respects democracy. Even some clergy and civil society leaders have joined the call, urging Tinubu to take the high road and show leadership by respecting the rule of law. The truth is that the government is cornered. The United States is not just another country, it is Nigeria's major trade partner, a key military ally, and one of its biggest foreign investors. Losing that relationship, even temporarily, would hurt badly. The threat of sanctions is not just symbolic, it can shake the entire political system. As each day passes, the tension builds higher. The question now is no longer if Tinubu will release Nnamdi Kanu, it is when and under what conditions. For the first time, it feels like the decision is no longer entirely in the hands of Nigeria's leaders. Global attention has turned to Abuja, and the government knows the world is watching every move closely. The coming days will determine everything, whether Tinubu stands firm and risks international isolation, or takes the bold step of releasing Kanu to restore faith in Nigeria's democracy. The weight of that choice grows heavier with every headline, every statement, and every passing hour. The atmosphere in Aso Rock has never been this tense. Every corridor is filled with quiet discussions, cautious voices, and nervous glances. The government knows that the world is waiting for one thing, a final decision on whether President Tinubu will release Nnamdi Kanu or defy international pressure. The matter has now gone beyond politics, it is about Nigeria's global reputation, its economy, and the legacy of its president. Inside the presidency, multiple committees have been formed to study the possible effects of both actions, releasing Kanu or keeping him detained. Each option carries heavy consequences. Releasing him could calm tensions, repair Nigeria's image abroad, and prevent US sanctions. But it could also anger certain political groups who see Kanu as a threat to national unity. On the other hand, refusing to release him could please those hardliners but lead to international backlash, economic pain, and isolation. It is a no-win situation, and everyone around Tinubu knows it. Reports say the president has been receiving confidential intelligence briefings from both local and foreign sources. These reports detail the seriousness of the proposed US sanctions and how quickly they could take effect once Ashley Moody's bill passes. The warnings are clear: sanctions could freeze Nigeria's access to certain international funding programs, limit military cooperation, and damage investor confidence. For a government already struggling with debt and inflation, that would be a severe blow. Behind closed doors, a few of Tinubu's advisors are pushing for what they call a strategic release. Their plan is to release Kanu quietly, under strict conditions that would limit his public activities. This approach, they say, will show that the government respects the law while maintaining control of the situation. Others, however, warn that any form of restriction after court orders could still be seen as disobedience, especially in the eyes of the US and human rights groups. At the same time, diplomatic pressure continues to mount. Foreign embassies in Abuja are reportedly seeking clarification from the presidency. The US Embassy has increased its communication with top Nigerian officials, and behind the scenes, quiet diplomatic talks are happening. Several Western countries are said to be coordinating their positions, ready to take a collective stance if Nigeria refuses to act. In other words, this is no longer just a U.S.E. Nigeria issue, it is becoming an international matter that could affect Nigeria's relations with multiple countries at once. In the streets, Nigerians are restless. Supporters of Nnamdi Kanu have been celebrating what they see as a turning point. Many believe the United States has finally forced the Nigerian government to face the truth. On social media, thousands of people are expressing hope that justice will finally be served. Yet, among the excitement, there is still fear that the government might try to delay the process again or find another excuse to keep him detained. For President Tinubu, the decision is more than legal, it is deeply political. Releasing Kanu could help him gain new support in the southeast, a region that has long felt neglected and misunderstood. It could also send a strong message that his administration is committed to justice and unity. However, opponents within his own circle might interpret it as weakness. They argue that such a move could embolden other regional groups to challenge federal authority. But time is no longer on his side. Ashley Moody's bill is moving fast in Washington, and every news outlet is covering it. The story is dominating headlines across Africa and among diaspora communities. International human rights organizations are also increasing pressure, demanding transparency and immediate action. In a few weeks, if Nigeria does nothing, the bill could pass into law, and the sanctions would begin. Financial experts are already warning that even the anticipation of sanctions is scaring investors away. Foreign companies are slowing their activities, waiting to see what happens next. The Naira's exchange rate has begun to feel the pressure. Analysts say the government can prevent further damage only by acting decisively and showing a clear respect for court orders. Inside Aso Rock, some reports claim that Tinubu has already held private talks with key Southeast leaders. These discussions reportedly focus on how to ensure peace after Kanu's release. There are also talks about possible amnesty programs, dialogue with youth groups, and plans to rebuild trust between the region and the federal government. It is becoming clear that the presidency is considering more than just releasing one man, it is weighing how to turn this crisis into an opportunity for reconciliation. But no matter what strategy is chosen, the world's attention remains fixed on Nigeria. The US Senate, European diplomats, and international media are all watching closely. Every statement from Nigerian officials is being analyzed, every delay is being noticed. In moments like this, silence itself becomes an answer, and not a good one. As the hours pass, tension continues to build. The Tinubu administration stands at a crossroads. If it releases Nnamdi Kanu, it could calm the political storm, rebuild trust with international partners, and show leadership that respects justice. If it refuses, it risks being remembered as the government that ignored its own courts and defied international law. The stakes could not be higher. The coming days will reveal the true strength of Nigeria's democracy, whether it is led by pride and stubbornness or guided by justice and wisdom. All over the country, citizens are waiting. Some pray for courage in Aso Rock, others prepare for whatever comes next. The decision now rests solely with President Tinubu. And when he finally speaks, his words will not only decide Nnamdi Kanu's fate, they will define how history remembers his government.